Hello, and welcome to our 2018 October release webinar. My name is Jessica Mills, and I am a Senior Marketing Manager on the Developer Relations team here at Akamai. I would like to first thank everyone on the line for taking the time to join us today. We're here to talk to you about our semi-annual release, the October release. Within our semi-annual releases, we've consolidated all of our product enhancements and announcements so that you know exactly what our new features and capabilities are that you can start taking advantage of today. Before we get started, I do want to let you know that after our webinar, you will receive a follow-up email with a recording of today's session. You can also find additional resources within the resource list module, which includes a copy of the slide deck that we're about to share. If you have any questions throughout the webinar, please send that to us via the Q&A module, and we'll have time at the end to answer all of your questions. If for any reason we run out of time, we will be sure to reach out to you directly. We have also put together a survey and would love your input on the content and overall webinar experience so we can keep getting better. Those who fill out the survey will be entered to win one of 3 of our Bluetooth tile trackers. So please save this link now, which you can also find in the resources module, and we'll share it again at the end of the webinar. Now let's get started. I am so excited to introduce our lineup of speakers today. We have Carm Genetow, our Senior Product Manager on Web Performance, as well as Ted Shooter, our Senior Product Manager leading DevOps, and Sid Padkar, our Product Manager who also supports our DevOps initiatives. And finally, we have Amol Mathur, Director of Products and Strategy for Security. So we have a fantastic lineup of people to walk us through the October release. We'll start today with what's new with Akamai for DevOps, and then we'll be going deeper into a live demo of Akamai Pipeline, followed by what's new with Web Performance and a demo of our new script management feature. And then we'll wrap with what's new with security, and then time at the end for Q&A, which again, you can feel free to ask questions in the Q&A module throughout the webinar. Now, without further ado, let me hand it over to Ted Shooter to walk us through what's new with Akamai for DevOps.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. If it's not obvious yet, I am super excited to let you know what we've added to the October release for DevOps, and drop a few hints on some of the things just around the corner. So whether you are driving towards DevOps today, DevOps enabled, or just something you're thinking about, we've made significant changes which really benefit all developers working with Akamai. We have some brand new tools and features to talk about. We've also made some improvements to some of the foundational areas under DevOps. So if we use that DevOps framework, that process, we've really made changes right across the entire flow, from coding to testing to operating. We start with coding. We've really made that simpler. So the ability to break up configs, the main way you interact with Akamai delivery and products, by breaking that up, we can now have individual teams own and iterate those pieces in their CI/CD environments. They can even test those areas individually now with new sandbox capabilities. So Akamai's local environment to test those capabilities. And on the ops side, we have brand new purge by cache tags, so a great way to organize your content, to manage your content deployment, and deploy new content instantly. And not to mention a number of CLIs touching really all aspects of Akamai products. So we're going to dive into a lot of these features. But before I move on, I want to talk about some of the things coming just around the corner. Edge workers is something we've talked about in the past. As I look at the engineering team right across from me, they've been hard at work here. So if you haven't heard about this, this is really the intersection of serverless compute and the edge, really giving you another option to run your own JavaScript, not at origin, not at the client, but in between at the edge. So a powerful new tool. We also have improvements to Terraform and DNS management. So all of this stuff is coming soon, so stay tuned for updates coming in the new year. So I'm going to start with our growing CLI library. The CLI is a powerful and extensible toolkit that allows you to manage and configure Akamai's platforms and products from the command line. This really is the simplest solution to integrate Akamai into your tools and workflow, especially CI/CD workflows. And we've introduced 7 new packages with the October release. You can see them here. We have certificates, Fast DNS, Site Shield, API Gateway, Image Manager, MPulse, and App Security. So if you're using any of these features or products from Akamai, I really encourage you to visit developer.akamai.com/CLI, the link at the bottom left corner, to find out more about those CLIs and how you can incorporate them into your workflows. We've also made significant improvements to existing packages on Purge, on the visitor prioritization cloudlet. We've also improved Property Manager. So we're going to dig into this one a little more closely. So there's a lot of improvements to the Property Manager area to talk about some of the things I mentioned in the intro. And we're really on a roadmap here towards an Akamai CLI 2.0 with support for package dependencies, namespace packages, built-in transparent API cache, and much, much more. So lots of great stuff coming in the October release and coming soon. So let me jump into the first area here, Akamai Sandbox. You might have heard this previously during the beta phase as DevPops. So what we hear is developers routinely writing code, of course, spinning out development environments for feature requests, for bug fixes, but often those changes aren't tested because of the complexity of our environments that we're in today, of the technology stack needed to recreate those environments outside of the live environments. So we've heard from multiple customers requesting a local Akamai server environment where they can test those changes before promoting them into those live environments, whether it's the staging network or the production network on Akamai. So what this does is it really reduces the risk of finding issues late in the process and that hard to find how do we break the build. So by testing early and often, we really can improve the developer velocity here. So Akamai Sandbox is the solution, enabling individual developers or teams to spin up their own Akamai environment in less than a minute to rapidly test their configuration changes and access their origins either locally or behind the firewall. So really this gives you the chance to spin up pseudo environments, but real environments to test those end-to-end functionality. If this is an area you're interested in finding out more, again, look at the link at the bottom of the page and sign up for that early program access. And I encourage everyone to do so. The next area I want to jump into is something we call federated development. As we touch sandboxes and getting more teams interacting with Akamai, this is a general trend that we see across all of our products and, of course, DevOps. We want more people working simultaneously in parallel. Now, the challenge I hear from most is Akamai configurations, that main interface point. Many of you have configs which are thousands of lines of code. Of course, managing something that big and having concurrent teams interact without tripping over each other can be a challenge. So with the new Property Manager CLI, we have the tools to break up the configuration, allowing different ownership, different permissions across those pieces, and the tools to validate and reassemble that into your configuration. So this is a really powerful new way to manage your configurations across your multiple teams and automate that back into the Akamai environment. So it's a really exciting area. Again, this is the Property Manager CLI that enables this capability as part of the 2.0 capabilities. As excited as I am on that one, it's not all it does. So here we have a great diagram of how that works. So starting from the configuration, breaking it up across multiple app owners. These are individual client-side files, which I can now manage in my Git repository. I can iterate, change, test using Sandbox, validate as they're being pushed out to the build server. But often, you are driving multiple environments. So in this example here, integration environments, QA environments, production environments, and how do I take the changes that I validated, say in integration, and then move them to QA? So as part of the new Property Manager CLI, we have the new Akamai pipeline. But instead of listening to me talk about this, we should get into a demo. So I'm going to hand over to Sid, and Sid's going to walk us through and show us what this looks like.
Thank you, Ted. Super excited about this demo. Like Ted mentioned, the pipeline functionality, the federated development functionality, is part of our new and updated Property Manager CLI, which became generally available a couple of weeks back as part of our October release. That means any one of you, anyone who has an Akamai delivery product can get started and play with it right away. We've been running a beta around it for a small set of participants, and the key feedback we really kept hearing is that this functionality, this CLI, really enables our users to completely leverage their configurations as code. So at its core, what the CLI does is it exposes Property Manager or a Luna UI as a client-side library. So this unlocks a bunch of cool functionality that is pointed out in this workflow, and I'll go through all of that in the demo. But the most powerful part about this is that it means that now you can work on your configurations in any environment of your choice. So whether it's an AWS-based architecture, a Jenkins-based, or some other build automation-based environment, or simply a local source control repository. For the purposes of this demo, I'm going to assume I'm working in the workflow we've shown over here. So I have a retail website with a lot of different app owners. I want to enable each one of them to work independently, make changes locally, source control those changes, move them to a local build server, and when they are ready, have these validated, code reviewed, and eventually promoted across many environments. So let's get started with the demo itself. I'm going to share my screen. And the property, as we mentioned before, the Property Manager CLI itself has two commands. One is the Property Manager command. This command allows you to talk to have your client-side library talk to one property. And then the second one that we have is the pipeline command that we are going to demo today. What this does is pretty much everything the Property Manager command does, but in the context of a build pipeline. The first step over here is for us to create a list of environments that we want. So in this example, I'm going to run an Akamai create pipeline command for the setup over here. I'm going to name it something that I want. In this case, I named it demo 4321. I can either base it off an existing config or I can start from scratch. In this example, I passed in an existing config that I have, and then finally I defined a list of environments that I want to create. So in this example, I've created a dev environment, a QA environment, and a production environment. And this is where the magic is happening. You'll see what this does is this command replicates your Property Manager config as a directory structure in your local environment. So this means that anything, you see demo 4321 created over here, this means that anything that you can traditionally do with the config in the UI can simply be done locally with a bunch of commands. So I'm going to use my terminal over here, and I'm going to leverage, in the interest of time, I'm going to leverage an existing pipeline that I've set up already to show you how this works. So here's an Akamai pipeline that I've set up. Let me show you how this works. So I'm going to go into this pipeline, and you'll see that what I have over here is a bunch of different directories. There are two directories that are critical over here. One's the environment directory wherein I define all of my different environments, so the dev, QA, prod. And then the second one is the templates directory, which is the federated piece Ted talked about, which breaks down your config into a bunch of snippets. So let's go into the environments directory and see what we have over here. We've got a variable definitions file, which essentially lets you tokenize anything in your configuration. In this scenario, we've tokenized CP codes, origin host name, sure out objects, but really it literally could be anything you want. Cloudlet policy, sure out objects. You could tokenize anything in your configuration file and define it over here. During the beta, we noticed a bunch of users actually have a site admin control this file and then sync it with a local vault such as Ansible Vault or some other variable storage tool that let you really separate out the variabilization or tokenization from your logic. You also see over here you've got a bunch of environments, the dev, QA, and prod environments that I talked about. I'm going to go into my dev environment. If I list out what's happening over here, you've got a file that lists your host name, so you could define what kind of host names and edge host names you want to use over here. You could edit it to reuse existing secure edge host names. You've got this variables.json files, which really is key in terms of defining how you differentiate between these environments. So in this case, the only thing that's different between my environments is my origin. So I've got my origin set to dev.sidstakaria.com. If I go into my QA environment, you'll see something similar over there. And that's how I've differentiated between my different environments. The next thing I'm going to do is now go into my templates directory. This is the part. So the way I've set up my config is I've got a bunch of snippets that different app owners on my site own. So shoes, furniture for all of the different apps. I've got a different snippet for my images, for my API traffic, and then I've got a main.json file. This is really the glue that holds everything together. So if I do go into my main.json, you'll see it's got a bunch of different includes over here. And this is the part that really lets you control, what rule comes after, in what order, what are the different snippets that we want to stitch together eventually. So this is really where that magic happens. If I now go into my shoes.json, what you'll see is the only thing my shoes.json has is this TTL behavior that I want my shoes team to control. So it's set to 10 days. That's the only thing they care about. Everything is common across the website. So that's the only thing that's controlled by them. You'll also see I've source control this whole thing. So you can see over here it's part of a master branch, but just to visualize this a little bit better, you'll see I've added all of my different snippets to my Git repository. And again, really simplistically, all I've done over here is if I have a path match condition for a certain app, I create that as my path match condition and then define the set of rules I want to define. So now let's go back and do a couple of things. I'm going to go into my pipeline and I'm going to do two things. One is I'm going to assume my shoes team wants to increase their TTL. They have certain, they really aren't happy with the offload that they are seeing. They've got their TTL set to 10 days. I'm going to set it to 20 days. If I again, just to visualize this a little bit better, today if I go into my shoes snippet in the property manager UI, it's set to 10 days. So I've now changed that to 20 days. And the second thing I'm going to do is add a new snippet. So I'm going to assume that I have a new app that I'm putting on this site. I'm going to call it sports.json. This is really for my sports team to now start selling a bunch of jerseys and apparel on the site. I'm going to say, again, I care about the TTL. I have a flash sale coming up. I change it to something that's really tiny, let's say 1 minute. Again, I need to go into my main.json. And now I'm going to include that sports.json in my snippet directory. And that's all that is to making a change. Now, if I go over here, I'm going to do an Akamai pipeline save to then sync these changes to my local property manager config. So I'm going to do an Akamai pipeline save, give it my pipeline name, and then save it for my dev environment. I need to run this from the right environment. And so now what you'll see is what my save command is doing over here is stitching together that entire config and then creating a server-side call. So the changes that I've made locally are actually synced with my server-side UI. So again, if we go to my UI over here, it's going to load for it's going to load for a couple of minutes. But you see you see my shoes.json file over here now has my TTL set to 1 minute. And then I should have called my shoes.json the sports, but you'll see a new snippet show up over here for the sports.json. The other really cool thing about this client-side config is it also has an inbuilt syntax validator. So if I go into my shoe.json and do something really stupid, let's say I misrepresented my TTL and now kick a save, it's going to complain about it, because what we've did is we've really brought down our property manager validation engine and let you validate on the client side itself. This is also the part where you could use the sandbox functionality that we have to kind of make sure the change that you made is doing the thing it's supposed to do. And you can also use our new test center APIs to make sure the change that you made does not bring down your site. So over here you see it's complaints saying caching does not know what TT is. So I'm going to simply change this to TTL. Again, do the right thing. But again, you see we've got built up this validation functionality at the client side. The next thing I'm going to do is manage all of this in my source control repository. So now that I've added all of this, I go into my templates directory and simply add everything I've done to source control. So I'm going to do a git add sports.json, and then I'm going to commit everything I just did to my Git repo. Let's say add sports, edit shoes. It's committed everything to my Git repo, and then I'm going to push it to my origin. So now if I go into my Git repository and I simply refresh that, you'll see my sports.json has showed up over here. My shoes.json just got edited 21 seconds back. And now I can simply start treating my configuration like any other piece of code. So if I do a git log, you'll see it gives me a history of everything that's changed. Let's say I want to figure out what's changed on my main, do a diff on my main.json. It gives me the history for that. And I could simply do a git diff again over here to know what are the different things that have changed in my latest commit. I'm going to pick 2 random commits in the interest of time, but you can see it gives you that diff right away. So again, super cool functionality. It really lets you treat your configurations as code. And now to bring it back to the workflow that we were talking about, let's now just simply promote this change that I have across my pipeline. So I'll simply do an Akamai pipeline promote, give it my pipeline name and my dev environment. Make sure I can see the screen when I'm typing that. And what this is now going to do is it's going to promote my change across my pipeline. So this is going to promote it to my dev environment. If I kind of do the same across, once that's promoted, I can now then validate my change, test it out, move it to my QA environment, validate my change, test it out, move it to production environment. So again, really cool functionality. The other cool part about this is now that all of this is possible via a single command, I could integrate it into a Jenkins, Circle CI, Travis CI, any kind of build automation tool, and make sure that a change is simply picked up, run overnight, and this entire workflow is automated. If you want to find out more about the Akamai pipeline, we have a link over here, github.com, Akamai/CLI-property manager. You can download it, get started with it, play with it right away. We also have links to the sandbox functionality and pipeline and a blog around how you could use this in your environment. Check it out. Let us know of feedback. I'm now going to turn it over to Karm, who's going to walk us through our web performance initiatives for this October release.
Thanks, Ted and Sid. Awesome work coming out of DevOps. Really excited to see everything that's going on there. Let's switch gears now and talk about web performance. Hi, everyone. My name is Karm Janito. I'm a product manager in web performance. And I'm going to walk you through some of the new and exciting things we have in web performance for this release. And then we'll go into a deep dive specifically into script management, one of our latest capabilities, so we can show you some of the great things going on there as well. So let's start with the web performance updates, or what's new here. We have grouped this into 3 key areas. The first area is really around impulse and providing more powerful insights. So this is with the introduction of the aggregate waterfall and the resource impact analysis. Both of these visualizations giving you a view into the resources and how they're performing over time, but also enable you to be able to build a model, experiment with speeding up, slowing down, or removing resources. So really giving you that power to do the analysis that you need to do with real user data. Second area is around data-driven performance. This is using real user data for optimization. And here we have script management, which will give you the visibility into and the ability to take action on problematic scripts. We have adaptive acceleration using Impulse as a back-end engine now, so with that more robust data, enabling you to have even better optimizations out of adaptive acceleration, and then also Quick for web now supported. Third area, API Gateway. A couple of conformance points here. We have support for OAuth 2.0 as well as Swagger 3.0. But from a feature function perspective, we have caching of GraphQL responses. So those responses providing offload similar to REST APIs. And also brand new is real-time reporting. So this is going to give you access to quickly find issues, take action, and mitigate them. So lots of great things going on in web performance. I highly encourage you to check it out on developer.akamai.com and learn more. So let's switch gears now and dig in a little bit more into script management, which is one of our latest capabilities. Before we dig into the demo, I do want to take a couple of minutes and just talk about the context and the background, how we got here with script management. I think as most of us know, websites are getting more and more complex, and especially with the prevalence of third parties. Third parties aren't going away anytime soon, and as we've heard from many of you, third parties are critical to business. They're not going away, but they do come with their set of challenges. So what we've heard is that they do cause chaos just by virtue of the number of scripts that are out there, the complexity of those scripts, as well as the various sources that they come from, and just that feeling of lack of control of what's going on your site. The second thing we've heard is the risk and the worry around third-party outages and how that can impact customer sites. So case in point, the Google DoubleClick outage that happened back in the spring, some of you may have heard about that, caused hundreds of sites to be down. So it's not a surprise that there is such a concern around third-party outages. So when we think about third parties, how prevalent are they on websites, on all websites, over the net? Latest data shows us that 30%, or almost incredibly, a third of all sites have over 90% of their content coming from third parties. So, and no wonder there's a worry and risk about third-party outages and how they can impact you. So let's dig in a little bit more in terms of how big of an impact can a third-party outage have on your site. We recently ran an experiment where we simulated something similar to the Google DoubleClick outage. And then we picked 4 of our own customer sites. We've anonymized them here. Basically, we ran a simulation with script management on and script management off and measured page load time. So if you take a look at this bar chart, you'll see here the blue bars are page load time with script management off, so 4 times the page load time than with script management on. The real point here is not about performance improvement, it's about performance protection with script management, and that's what this bar chart shows, is that with script management on, you are protected against incidences like third-party outages. So how does script management help to protect against these problems we've talked about? So we've talked about the chaos, we've talked about the number of scripts, we've talked about the risk of third-party outages. So how does script management help protect against these type of problems? Well, it does this in 2 ways. The first is through automatic protection, or a single point of failure protection. And so what this is script management is continuously monitoring what's going on in your sites with those scripts. And when it finds problematic scripts, it will automatically defer those scripts to protect your site. So there's no user intervention required when automatic single point of failure is on. So that's just working for you. The second part of script management is the part that gives you visibility into the scripts that are on your site, information about those scripts, and the ability to take action on those scripts. So it's giving you that control back so you can see what's going on, see what factors are in play, and take action as necessary. The other thing we're going to demo today, which is part of script management, is the Script Management Policy Tester. This is a Chrome plugin that comes with script management, and what it lets you do is it lets you experiment with blocking and deferring scripts, but within the local context of your browser. So you can test blocking, deferring, see what the consequences are, and once you're confident with that, then you can go back to script management and take action to protect your site. So without further ado, let me share my screen, and we'll go through a demo here. All right, so what we're looking at here is the landing page for script management, or what we call the dashboard. I'm going to run you through a scenario. We're going to use one of our com site. It's in the business of producing maple syrup. And the scenario is that we have been alerted for this site that there is a performance degradation. We don't know what's going on, but we're going to go into script management and see if we can determine if there's an issue here and if we can take action within script management. Before we do that, though, let me just give you a little bit of a lay of the land in terms of what you're seeing in this UI. Front and center at the top here, you'll see single point of failure protection. This is what we were talking about before, the automatic protection. Then when it's on, which it is on for this site, it's automatically monitoring what's going on with scripts. And if they exceed a threshold, then it will automatically defer those scripts and protect your site. So that's the automatic protection part. And then when you look further down in the UI, this is where you get that visibility we talked about. So you can see what scripts are on your site, and you get information on those scripts, like what category are they, what group, whether they're first and third party. And something that's super important is how big of an impact are they having on your site. So if you look here, I've already sorted by impact, and I can see that there's 3 that are rated as high. That means that these scripts are taking at least longer than 1 second to download. And when I investigate further, I see that this last one is actually over 11 seconds, and the second last one is almost 2 seconds. The other thing I find out in talking with my marketing team is that, in fact, this last script is no longer even needed on the site. It was left behind residual. So we could, in fact, take an action here to block this script. The other script is still needed, but not critical, so we could take an action here to defer the script in order to help protect the site. So we could block and defer. But before we do that, what I'd like to do is just test. I want to make sure that any action I take here is not going to have any negative consequences on my site. So we're just going to pause script management here for a second, and I'm going to take you to the policy tester. This is what I was talking about before, where you can test actions locally and see the consequence on your site. So here at the top of the page, we have our Maple AF site loaded. At the bottom of the page, we have the Script Management Policy Tester, the Chrome plugin that comes with Script Management loaded. And by the way, you can get this on the Chrome store, but we have this loaded. And when you scroll down, you can see all those same scripts that we were looking at in Script Management. And you can take actions here to see what's the consequence of deferring or blocking vis-a-vis what's going to happen to my site. So what we're going to do first is I want to show you what the site is like without taking any actions. I just want to confirm that there is that performance degradation and that I'm seeing what I've been reported to have been told to me. So down here you can see no action on any of the scripts. And what I'm going to do, and it's important for you to watch the top part of the screen while you watch the site loading, and hopefully it'll come across okay in the WebEx, but let me just apply that. And so now it's just the site is loading. And hopefully it comes across, but it should be coming across fairly slow. And it just loaded again. So definitely there is some kind of issue here. Typically the site loads way faster than that. So what we're going to do is go back to our list of scripts and recall those 2 scripts that we want to block and defer. So we can go down here into the policy tester, set this one to block, set this one to defer. Out of the way for a second. We're going to set this one to defer and this one to block. And then we're going to test this locally. Again, when we're testing locally, you're only testing within the context of this browser. So when I test this locally, and you can keep an eye on the top part of the screen, I can see that the site is loading much faster. So definitely taking those 2 actions on those 2 scripts is definitely something that we need to do. When I scroll through this website, it's a pretty simple website. I don't see any other negative impacts. I feel confident now that the change I've made will have a positive effect on my site. So now I'm going to go back to script management, and what I can do here now is take that action on a more permanent basis. So I can go into here and I can block this script and defer the script, and then follow the regular change management process where I can go through staging and then go through production. Or what we've also done with script management is, because we know sometimes the issue can be pretty imperative, you can go directly straight through to production with the change, but the standard flow would be to go from staging to production. So that would be, this is the standard workflow through script management. There are a lot of other capabilities here, but hopefully you get the gist of the visibility you can get, the control you can get, the protection you can get, and the testing capabilities that you can get from the demo that we provided so far. Now just jumping back to one more slide. So lots of great things here, both in web performance and in script management. I highly encourage you, if you're already an ION customer, check out script management, check out some of these other capabilities. If you're not an ION customer, learn all about it. All of this information is available on developer.akamai.com. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Amal to tell you all about security.
Thank you. All right, so we've got a bunch of updates across various web and enterprise security products, so I'm going to try to go through them as quickly as possible and then focus on a few specific areas. So when we looked at our sort of release of different capabilities, we focused on 3 broad buckets. First is giving the ability for our end users and customers to identify and respond to threats in a much faster manner across our product landscape, simplified management of our security products so they can onboard more additional properties onto the application firewall, and just a bunch of investment in expanding our platform and protection capability from a DDoS standpoint. So let's talk about the Bot Manager Endpoint Protection Report. So folks who are using Bot Manager, it's our solution that helps identify highly sophisticated automated traffic that is hitting your site. In Security Center, a new report has been launched which provides really good visibility to customers for specific parts of their site, like let's say a login endpoint where customers are, end users are logging in to a site, and provides analytics around what is the human traffic versus what is the bot traffic that is hitting that particular protected part of the website, which we call endpoint. It gives a lot of analytics around what the characteristics of the bots or automated traffic hitting that part of the site, what is the user agent, what are the botnet IDs, what part of the world these bots are coming from, what kinds of bots are these, and so on. So in a simple manner, an end user can get visibility into what kind of automated traffic is hitting that particular site. On the web security standpoint, we introduced Web Security Analytics, which is our real-time tool to look at historical and real-time data. I'll cover that in more detail in the next slide. For our Prolexic platform, which provides DDoS protection for the entire data center, there are two major enhancements that were launched in October. One is improvements to the analytics routed dashboard, which is available in Luna. Various features were added where you can visualize and see the traffic flow from your various data centers and how the links are connecting to the Akamai Scrubbing Center platform. And a lot of telemetry around that routing can be visualized down to individual subnet levels. The other part, which will be very interesting for the developers on the call who are also using Prolexic, a lot of APIs to consume analytics data is now exposed and available on developer.akamai.com, which would allow end users to programmatically get data around various metrics related to the routing of traffic through the Akamai platform. Attack reports which are generated can be retrieved using APIs. List of both regular events, which could be just a regular system event or a routing event, or critical events related to attacks can now be pulled down using APIs as well. And though the overview of the APIs, the resources available, and all the documentation is available on developer.akamai.com under the Cloud Security Prolexic Analytics section. All right, now the next part, the next bucket I talked about was the simplified management. I'll cover the automated attack groups in a separate slide. As you know, we have enterprise application access, which is a way of exposing securely and easily internal applications to the internet without the need of a cumbersome VPN solution. So folks who are using that can now expose client-based applications in addition to HTTP applications in a secure, easy manner to users on the internet without requiring any kind of VPN solution. The third bucket is platform enhancements. I'll talk about Prolexic in a separate slide. On our enterprise threat protection, which is a DNS-based solution for identifying violations of acceptable use policy, for detecting phishing attacks, for detecting malware, we have added a proxy capability, which allows inspection and malware detection in a proxy architecture, and also provides additional URL threat intelligence in a proxy architecture for users as well. All right, so let's sort of go deeper into some of the key things that were launched in October. The first is Web Security Analytics. Now, if you are using multiple Akamai web security products, it is very key to be able to visualize all of the security events and the ability to filter, slice, and dice that data so you can quickly drill down into specific events of interest in a single pane of glass to do investigations, to look at what might be happening in your environment. So in Security Center under Analysis is the Web Security Analytics tool. It allows you to go back 90 days to look at historical data and also gives visibility and access to data in near real time. On the left of Web Security Analytics, you see multiple dimensions. So essentially, you can filter by attack type, by rules that have been fired in the WAF or DDoS protection rules. You can filter out based on reputation profile or category if you have the Akamai Threat Intelligence Client Reputation product, and you can overlay bot management rules as well. Where this also really helps is if you want to zero in on traffic, which is tripping multiple different controls from different products. So you could have a specific IP address or traffic from a specific ASN number that is trying to do SQL injection, but at the same time, it is also sending requests which are being caught by the web attacker category in client reputation in a different request, then you can overlay those filters and look for specific malicious traffic in your environment. So a really fast and cool capability to quickly understand what's happening in your security environment. The next major update is automated attack groups, and this is particularly interesting and very exciting and should be, sound very useful to the people attending the call. So if you're using Kona Site Defender, this is our flagship WAF product. Most of you I see are using this for your most critical, mission critical, business critical properties. It could be your main transaction site, your main retail site, payment gateways, etc. Now, most customers we speak with, they have a set of 5 to 10 highly critical properties where they like to use Kona Site Defender and Kona rule set, which is highly configurable, highly manageable, but at the same time, it requires effort to be put in by either your own developer or security teams or Akamai professional services team to keep the firewall policies tuned, to upgrade to the next version of Kona rule set as we release it, and so on. Now, most of the organizations we speak with, they have a long tail end of properties which are not super critical. Some of them are transient properties which are only sort of created in live for marketing purposes, and they don't want to really onboard those properties onto Kona rule set because of the effort required to maintain and onboard, which is needed for your critical properties. So now with this feature, which is in beta, when you create a new policy within a security configuration in Kona Site Defender, you have a choice. You can either create a policy with Kona rule set, which is what you are used to doing, or you can create a policy with what we are calling automated attack groups. Now, as you see on the screen, there are automated attack groups around cross-site scripting, SQL injection, local file inclusion, remote file inclusion, etc. And these are categories where the rules within each of these categories are curated, are maintained, are updated automatically in the background by Akamai and Akamai's threat research and threat ops team. All you as a customer need to do is either turn it in alert mode, turn it in deny mode. So it's as easy as just switch it on and forget about it. So if you have a large set of properties which you want to protect in your web estate, but you don't really have the manpower to go through the heavy-handed Kona rule set process, which is required for your main properties, you can now protect your entire web estate literally at a flick of a switch and not have to worry about leaving those properties unprotected. So very excited about this new feature. All right, so finishing off with all the expansion work that we are doing with Prolexic. So folks who are using our Prolexic Scrubbing Center network to protect their data centers, we had 7 scrubbing centers until last year across the globe, 2 in the US, 2 in Europe, and 3 in Asia. We have significantly expanded that capacity in terms of both the distribution of scrubbing centers globally and the absolute capacity to fight attacks. So we have opened, as you can see on the map, multiple new scrubbing centers in the US, across Europe, and we have added scrubbing centers in Asia as well, in Singapore and Tokyo. And we are also in planning works to open a new scrubbing center in Melbourne, which would take our Australian scrubbing centers to 2, as we have one in Sydney as well. So in total, by mid next year, we'll have 19 scrubbing centers. By this end of this year, we'll have 18 scrubbing centers, and we'll be able to fight attacks in excess of 8+ terabits per second. And typically our philosophy in terms of platform expansion is that we want to be 5 times or higher of the largest DDoS attack that the internet has ever seen, and that has been reported and verified. So as you guys would have heard earlier this year, GitHub saw a DDoS attack due to the memcache reflection attack, which was 1.35 terabits per second. So that was one of the reasons that we are in sort of hyper expansion mode to be ready to fight the next wave of attacks, which could be even higher than what we saw with GitHub. The other thing we have announced with Prolexic, which is a fully managed service backed by our Security Operations Center, is a 0-second SLA. Now, what we do as part of our Prolexic onboarding is when we do the service validation to make sure that the routing works and there's no service disruption, we also, our Security Operations Centers, work with the customers to put some pre-mitigation in place so that when we know that a particular subnet is only expecting to receive HTTP traffic, then we can automatically block at the edge of our scrubbing centers, let's say, any UDP traffic that is not expected on those subnets. And what we have observed over the years is that if we put these pre-mitigation rules in place, then a high number of attacks, a percentage of attacks, get mitigated in 0 seconds at the edge of our platform. And there's no human intervention required from either the application owners or our security operations engineers to really triage the attack and put any active mitigation, thus losing precious time while the customer origin might get impacted. So what we have seen over the years is that if we are able to put proper pre-mitigation with consultation with the customers, 65 to 70% of the attacks are pre-mitigated. In the GitHub incident, which was a highly publicized, GitHub engineering wrote their own blog about it. That DDoS attack was mitigated in 7 minutes. Now, the time 7 minutes it took was more from their end to activate their APIs to route onto the platform, but from the Akamai end, it was mitigated in 0 seconds because we already had rules in place to deny the UDP traffic from the Memcache reflection servers. So that's the other update, which is very exciting for Prolexic. And I hope that folks who are using these different products can leverage these capabilities. And for automated attack groups, if you're interested to be part of the beta program, please contact your Akamai account team who can reach out to the product team and we can get you set up. With that, thanks for attending, and I'll hand it back over to Jessica.
Great. Thank you so much, Amol. So for those of you on the line, again, just a reminder before we go into Q&A, to please fill out our survey. You can see the bit.ly link right there. It should also pop up on your screen, and then there's a link to it in the resource module. So please fill this out, and maybe you'll be the lucky winner of a Bluetooth tracker tile. All right, let's get into Q&A. So I think the first question we have on here, Sid, this one I believe is for you, and it's a question on how someone can sign up for the bulk configuration management beta.
Yeah, that's a good question. So the bulk search and update essentially lets you search and update across many of your properties within your account. You can sign up for this beta by going to developer.akamai.com/devops, and then there's a beta sign up link under the build capabilities section.
Great. Thank you. And this one is another one for you. I haven't, if someone has a heavy AWS architecture, can they use Akamai pipeline within that?
Yeah, that's a good question. They can. So just because the CLI is completely environment agnostic, they can simply tie in the CLI calls into whether it's an AWS architecture, whether it's any other cloud provider based architecture. All you're doing is just calling the CLI from there. So shouldn't be different to any other AWS or other cloud provider specific API or CLI you use.
Great, thank you. And Amol, we have a question for you around Bot Manager. What does Bot Manager look like in the future, especially related to REST API bot detection?
Sure. So today we have a mobile protection module, which is essentially a mobile SDK, which once it is embedded into the customer's application and that's published onto the App Store or the Google Play Store, then that capability can be used to detect bot traffic over APIs as well. So that capability is available today.
Great. And another one for you, Amol. Are there plans to have, I'm sorry, this might actually be for you or Sid. Are there plans to have Akamai Pipeline available for Kona configurations?
Not yet, but that's a really good question. So we have for Kona, we have rule templates that do something similar, but they don't create a client-side library. So you can leverage that at least for now, but that's good feedback. We'll look into it.
Okay. And Amol, do you know if there will be notification options available for web security analytics like there are for Security Monitor?
Yes, that is on the roadmap. It's not available today, but that is on the roadmap, yes.
Fantastic. And then now punting back to Ted, this one is for you. Does the Akamai Sandbox replace my test environment onboarding?
Does it replace my test environment onboarding? Tough question. I'm not too sure which test environment you're referring to there. Sandbox definitely, think of Sandbox like the staging network, where right now everyone contributing to the configuration would test it in staging. So if you have multiple people making changes, that latest change is always in the staging network. So you're getting that collision there. Think of the Sandbox as taking that environment, localizing it so that that individual developer isn't worried about what other folks are doing. They're just making changes and iterating inside their own environment. So they're able to quickly test in a real Akamai environment without others interacting with them.
Yep, thank you. And we have time for just a couple more questions. Sid, any plans for Akamai pipeline style method for cloudlets?
Not yet. One of the cool parts about cloudlets is you could leverage Akamai pipeline to simply segregate cloudlet policies or cloudlet behaviors right in the config itself. So there's a workaround to that. It's a little bit of a hacky way, but within cloudlets itself, there aren't any plans as of now. But again, something we can look at.
Okay. And Karm, I have one question for you around script management. How does script management know when to take action to defer scripts?
So script management is using round trip time. So if you're using Chrome, then it's using round trip. If you're using one of the other browsers, it's using navigation time API, and then it calculates the average round trip time. It multiplies it by 8, and that's the threshold it's using. And so if it's beyond that RTT times 8, then it'll automatically defer the script.
Okay. All right, last question, and Karm, this is for you again. How does the pages authos, how are they kept informed on blocked third-party scripts?
How are sorry, can you repeat the question? Is it how do we know which ones are blocked?
Yes.
So when you go into the UI in the second half of the UI, you can see the scripts and the status on each script, and you should be able to see the latest status, which is either blocked, deferred, or no action. So you should be able to go right into script management and see the latest status on each one of those. Does that answer the question, or was it about the automatic protection?
I'll follow up and ensure that that answers it. And then actually the last question, Karm, can we get historical third-party calls data in script management?
Yes, we can. So it's not in the UI today, but it's going to be deployed in the next couple of weeks where you can actually, for every script, you can see the historical view. I think we're going to go back the last 10 times it was accessed. So you can see a historical view. So not only seeing, is it a moment in time problem or is it a historical problem with the script? So that's definitely going to be there in the next couple of weeks.
All right, fantastic. Well, that takes us to the top of the hour. So that's a wrap for us. Thank you so much to everyone on the line. Thank you so much to our speakers for leading a fantastic session. Here's a final thank you slide with another link to the survey, as well as links to our October release overview, where you can find deeper dive blog posts on each of the things we've covered today, as well as more. And do be sure to sign up for our developer program so that you're always in the know about future events like this. Everyone on the line will receive a recording of this webinar within the next few business days. Thank you so much, everyone. I appreciate it.